Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting ICPS behind the scene tour. Today, we're going to be seeing Jeremiah Harris's wonderful award-winning collection. Very excited about that. ICPS has a website. It's carnivoroursplants.org, and you can see over 50 years of carnivorous plant cultivation and conservation. This year, May of 2024, we are going all the way to Vienna, Austria for our international conference. We usually have an international conference every other year. And last year, 2023, we were in Japan. And now 2024, we're in Vienna, Austria. We're going to take 2025 off, but then in 2026, we will be in the Americas, probably North America. All right, the conference for this year is May 24th through May 26th. Those are the presentations. Those are the lectures. After that, there's a couple of days of field trips. You can go to the German-speaking Carnivorous Plant Society's website for more information. And just today, they updated the program, a couple of guest speakers, keynotes, and they also posted some of the plant vendors that are going to be there. And if you can make it, I highly encourage you to do so. ICPS is a group of professionals and backyard growers from all over the world. We try to have frequent webinars or behind the scene tours, so you can check out our Facebook page for that. If you're a member, you're going to go to ICPS Club Express to find those links. If you go to our YouTube page, you will see that we have 5 animated videos about growing carnivorous plants and how to care for them and a little bit about conservation. I encourage you to watch them and share them. And if you're a teacher, you can definitely utilize them in your classroom. The first Wednesday of May every year is World's Carnivorous Plant Day. We are going on the 4th annual World Carnivorous Plant Day. This year, it will be May 1st, 2024. On that day, we publish over 24 videos from scientists and growers from all over the world in all different languages. If you want to participate, please send me a message now at education@carnivorousplants.org or kenny@carnivorousplants.org, because we do need you. If you want to become a paid member, you get 4 quarterly beautiful newsletters. You sign up by going to icps.clubexpress.com. Like I mentioned earlier, we also have e-memberships where you don't get the physical copy of the Carnivorous Plant newsletter, but you get access to the digital copy. And once you become a member, you get access to the past 50 years of information. And another thing that we like to do for our members is to have a seed bank. Currently, we are in need of seeds. If you're a grower and you are a member, or if you are not a member and you have surplus seeds, please consider donating them to the International Carnivorous Plant Society. We would greatly appreciate it. Speaking of donations, this year, through the help of many international carnivorous plant nurseries and one individual, we were able to find 50 teachers from around the world with our Carnivores in the Classroom grant. We provided them with $150 worth of carnivorous plants to add to their classroom. If you want to help support this, you can go to carnivorousplants.org/donate. I say this in every webinar and every behind the scene tour because people do donate, because they see the value in having carnivorous plants in kids' lives. And I said this a couple of times. You can probably remember the first time you heard about carnivorous plants or the first time you were intrigued by them, and you were probably a kid. So we want to be sparking that passion and that eagerness to conserve them. So I highly encourage you to donate to this program. These are the wonderful people and organizations that supported our Carnivores in the Classroom grant this year. Another thing that you can do to support our education and conservation initiatives is, I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. You can go to our online store, which ships worldwide. You can get a tote bag, a mug, a t-shirt, and you can be decked out with really cool ICPS merch, and all of the proceeds benefit our programs. Welcome, Jeremiah. Thank you for being a longtime supporter of the ICPS, and I ask you a lot, and thank you for following through.
Yeah, no worries at all. So happy to finally be able to do a live meeting with you guys, and really appreciate what you've done recently for the ICPS. It's just a wonderful organization. I think I've been a member, joined probably in, I think, 98, I would say. So a little while back there, and just does great things. And I've made most of the conferences. I missed last year's in Japan, but hopefully in Austria this year or next year, I'll see everyone.
Perfect. All right, so
Nice.
Jeremiah, you're welcome to show us around.
Got it. So everyone, welcome to Colorado Springs, Colorado. This is my large greenhouse. So one side of it is really designed for Highland Nepenthes, with some intermediate and hybrids growing on 2/3 of it. And then the other 1/3 is for Flytraps and Sarracenia. So I think we will start with the Flytraps and Sarracenia. So if there are things people want to see, definitely put it in the comment. If you guys have questions, let us know, and we will try and get to as many of those as possible. So basically, this greenhouse is a 1,000 square feet. So it's 50 feet wide, 50 feet long by 20 feet wide. I have it set up with these metal benches, and then flood tables that the Sarracenia are growing in. Each one of those flood tables has some drip irrigation to it. And to make sure it doesn't get too wet, I have drilled holes, like if you can see this one here, about 1 inch from the bottom of the flood table, so the excess water just drips out. In Colorado Springs, I'm able to use tap water for all my carnivorous plants. I do have a backup 300-gallon RO tank just in case the water goes out or the water starts getting a little bit too high of dissolved solids in it. But I haven't used that in probably about 6 years, so it's just a backup and only when needed. But as you can see, I mean, it's early November. Sarracenia are really starting to fade. Some still have some pretty good color, but not near what they looked like back in like September or August timeframe. Some of the perp or purpurea hybrids are still looking really nice. This is one of my favorite, a recent acquisition. It was originally bred by Miroslav in Czech Republic, and I believe it's a Montana crossed with his PO1, and it's just a beautiful plant. Also stuff like King Cobra is still looking just spectacular. It's just getting darker and darker as the days and winters get shorter, but beautiful hybrid done by Phil. Also, on this side is another flood table. I actually have 6 flood tables for Sarracenia and Flytraps on this side, and they're about 4 feet by 8 feet, give or take. Most of my new arrival Venus Flytraps start in this greenhouse. So like here are all the new arrivals from like this year or maybe late last year. So it takes about a year before I move those up into my large 5 or 6 inch mother pots, and these are in 3.5-inch pots now, but some really interesting or rare cultivars. I think I just passed 400 different varieties of Venus flytrap in the collection. Some of them are quite different, others of them look almost identical. I have no supplemental lighting on this side of the greenhouse. Even in the middle of winter, Colorado still gets a lot of light. And this side of the greenhouse never freezes. So it only gets as low as about 45 degrees, but I figure that's enough to get them into dormancy. I would like a nice hard frost on them every couple years, but most of the plants in here, they haven't seen a frost in at least 5 or 6 years. Let's see, and doing okay on time-wise, but I think if you guys have questions on the Sarracenia and Flytrap side before we move on, because I think we'll have about 5 different sections, so we have to keep it relatively quick.
All right, so Jeremiah, you might have answered it, but people are wondering about what you do for dormancy. And people in the comment section were talking about, um, amount of light and things like that.
Yes. So everything here just will get a natural dormancy because the light levels do go down in the winter. Stuff is already going dormant, and stuff has never been under 55 degrees so far this fall. So even not getting super cold, I mean, a lot of these plants are going dormant, especially stuff like this is an Aureophila. I mean, it is completely gone. I see a few sundews in with it, but yeah, they'll go dormant naturally. This greenhouse is heated, so I have this 150,000 BTU Modine heater. So this is my main heater. It's able to keep this greenhouse at 55 degrees, even if it was minus 20 Fahrenheit outside. And then I have this one, which is actually my backup heater. So if power went out, this one does not require electricity to turn on. So it will come on if temperatures in here get about 50 degrees. And that one is able to keep this greenhouse just enough to stay alive, even on the coldest of nights. But dormancy, they'll go into dormancy. Like all these fly traps here, if you would have seen them maybe a month ago, would have just been spectacular. Just a bed of hundreds and hundreds of traps. But in the last month or so, I mean, some of them, they don't look terrible yet. It's just they are going into dormancy. All of the very tall, erect summer traps have kind of come off, and they're getting much shorter and closer to the ground traps as winter comes in. Okay, can you guys still see me okay?
Yep, you're doing good. So we're going to see about 5 areas today, and one question is, how do you manage everything? And you're traveling a lot. So how many hands are on deck to take care of everything we're about to see?
Exactly. So for the most part, it is just me and my wife. She has been in Colorado for about the last year now. So she's only helped out for the past year. But I do have volunteers and friends that come and help somewhat more or less regularly, depending on how their lives go. But Trevor, he moved to Florida relatively recently, so in April. So I haven't had him helping out in quite a while. Then I have an Eric that's from Denver, and he comes down usually about once a month. Howard and Beastie from Brambles Botanicals. They were over quite a bit for about 2 years, but it's slowed down a little bit as they're getting their own operation kind of up and running. But they still repotted my whole ping collection, I think, earlier this year. So that was amazing. And then have Brad, who's over as much as he can. But again, he's going to school and getting a degree, I believe, in history and wants to become a history professor. And then I had one intern from Colorado College last year. So in the last 2 months, I would say I've had 1 day of help outside of myself. So it just really depends. Other than that, it's just coming in here myself almost every day. I'm around to make sure things are looking good. Basically, the 20th of each month, I go around and weed everything because I do not like any sort of weeds in the greenhouse. And so I've been pretty good at that. I still have a oxalis every once in a while, but I've almost eradicated it. I eradicated Utricularia subulata from my collection about 4 years ago and haven't seen it in more than 1 or 2 pots a year. So it's just a matter of making sure you keep up with things, trimming back all the dead Sarracenia. So even now I've trimmed back hundreds and hundreds of pictures, but you see most of the pictures are still that I have are still looking relatively good. Some of them, the tops are looking about like this. So this one's about ready to trim off. But yeah, it takes a fair bit of time, but then I get as much ready to go as I can. Actually, for the last 4 years, it was work as hard as I could and then go see my future wife in Malta. So then I could spend as much time with her as possible as soon as I got all my greenhouse work caught up.
All right, very good.
Okay, so we better head on to the next greenhouse. So the next greenhouse we're heading to was actually the second greenhouse I ever built. So connection might be a little difficult as we're heading up to the other one, but we head up here, and it is now my Flytrap greenhouse. So it will have, I think, just over 300 different of my mother Flytraps, and then about the 100 that I still have in that greenhouse will probably come up here either this winter or next winter. So, okay, we'll head on in here. This is actually a Ryan greenhouse. I would have probably finished this one off. It would have probably been about 2003 if I had to guess. So it's held up really pretty well. I probably need to change some of the panels out. We had some hail that has damaged that a little bit. But this greenhouse will freeze solid every night during the winter. So I will give you a quick overview. These also have flood tables, but this is redwood that I've stained that I use to hold it up. And I have fly traps growing under, honestly, the cheapest LED lights that I could find on Amazon. So they're just like shop lights underneath the benches. And then on top of the benches, we have mostly my mother stocks. So I get them in order each year. So we go from 00700, which is the first one. And then we go from A's, B's, all the way to Z on the other side. So just in case I need to find a fly trap relatively quickly, I know where to start. I also try to keep the clones that people have made together. So these are all Green Jaws clones. So starting with Atlantic Cockle, and then going all the way to like Shere Khan, Titanium. And so then I can kind of see all Green Jaws plants all in one location. So it's kind of cool to see what people breed what fly traps. Same with like Crazy Craig's plants, fly trap stores plants, and Fayetteville's. So having a lot more of those recently. So this greenhouse is heated at about 26 degrees in the winter and gets up to about 90 degrees during the summer. But even on a day like today, we're probably about 60 degrees outside, which is unusually warm, but it was about 11 degrees 2 days ago, which was unusually cold. So we've had quite the swings here recently. But yeah, they don't mind freezing solid, and then it will thaw, freeze solid, and thaw, 30 or 40 times over the course of the winter. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about the Flytrap greenhouse?
How often do you repot a plant?
So every single Flytrap in my collection gets repotted at least once a year. So my favorite time to repot would be after January 1st through about early March. But that means every single Flytrap in this collection, including the plants they'll have for sale, mother plants, get repotted at least once a year. Some of the plants that I really want to propagate faster, I actually repot twice a year, but that's usually only like the first year I have them if I really want to give them a boost. But for the most part with fly traps, I would say the more you repot, the better.
And how do you fertilize them?
So fertilizing, I try and wait until the growing season starts, and then I hit them with 1/4 strength maxi about once a month, starting in April. I do find that causes a lot more moss growth, and therefore I feel like I do have to repot a little bit sooner. But if I didn't fertilize as much, I probably wouldn't have to repot as much, but also the plants probably wouldn't grow quite as fast and be quite as big. But I don't know if you can see, but these are getting just blasted with sunlight. So on this side of the greenhouse, I have no supplemental lighting. This size is relatively close to the house. So in the summer, the sun gets blocked. So I put in a couple of these Flora Wave LEDs. So these are from Carnivorous on just that first couple feet of this greenhouse, just to give them supplemental lighting. And I've done that the last 2 years and really liked it.
Everything looks so beautiful for almost winter.
Exactly. I mean, usually they're a little bit more dormant than this, but we've had a very warm fall until just a week ago, and then we got about 8 inches of snow, and now it's starting to cool down. One more question here before we move on.
Um, back
Oh,
for the,
soil.
yeah.
I use a mix. It's about 60% peat, 40% perlite, so give or take 50-50. I find they're very happy with that. I mean, if I had unlimited money, I think I'd put them all in nice, pure long fiber sphagnum, but that's just a little too expensive for me each year, especially with repotting so frequently.
And your preferred method to propagate them is to take like little baby divisions or to do leaf pulls?
Usually just divisions. So each year I'll get a couple divisions off of each plant when I repot it, or I take kind of that back rhizome. So as the leaves have started to die, I'll just snap that off in the fall. And that usually makes 4 or 5 new divisions. I don't do any mass propagation, no tissue culture or in vitro propagation. So it's just what I can propagate in the greenhouses kind of naturally. I did tissue culture about 10 years ago, but as you can see, like my fly trap area is already completely full, so I don't need any more fly traps at this time.
And what size are the pots that we're looking at right now?
Yeah, so the mother pots, I think I moved all into these 6-inch square pots. So I used to get all these from McConkey. They were I think a wholesale pot seller out of the Pacific Northwest, and then I think they upped their minimum order to like $500. So I think I just got these on Amazon last year. But I think it's a 6 by 6 inch square pot. Been pretty happy with these. I would probably like to go to those white hydro pots some year, but again, they're quite a bit more expensive, and I'd need about 400 of them to do my whole collection. These smaller fly traps are on 3.5-inch pots. So as I take cuttings of them and these are ready to sell, these are 3.5. And this is Crazy Craig's carnivorous plant razor blades, I believe. So just some little starts right there.
And we kind of saw, but the water level is maybe like an inch.
Yeah, we're probably at a solid inch. So if we take that out, I would say that's probably 1.5 inches, give or take. I will let it slightly dry out in the summer, but never completely dry. Usually in the summer, I have to fill these trays usually every other day in the summer, and in the winter, it's more like once a week, every 2 weeks. Just depends on how hot it is outside. And
All
then
right.
this is just greenhouse polyfilm, and then this is a PVC pipe. So it's relatively cheap and easy to create these water trays, which actually Robert Coe kind of showed me how to do this about at least 10 years ago.
All right, very good. You're very lucky that you can use your tap water.
Is
And
super, super lucky. And one thing I've been thinking about doing in this greenhouse is just putting in an automatic float valve. So just when water level gets low, and then my mom wouldn't have to water it when I'm gone. But during the winter, it takes so little water, it doesn't really matter.
all right, you just mentioned your mom. How into carnivorous plants is she compared to how into you she is?
She loves me a lot more than she loves carnivorous plants. So I would say she might have known what a Venus flytrap was before I was around. But by the time I was about 5 years old, I think I got my first Venus flytrap. And then I wanted to be read all the amazing carnivorous plant books. I think that was actually before Savage Gardens even came out. So I really loved the like carnivorous plants of the world, the carnivorous plants by Adrian Slack. And I remember my mom reading those to me at 5 years old, give or take. And I just loved them. So she does know how to take care of pretty much everything, but she does it just to help me out. It's not something she would do for fun, and not something she does on her in her free time, that's for sure.
All right, I think we're ready for the next greenhouse and or area. And as you do that, I'll say that Aaron, thank you, Aaron, who is asking about the water height. Thank you,
Yep.
Kevin and Jacob, for asking about the soil and the hibernation. And then I
So
don't
yeah,
know.
those will go into a much stronger dormancy because it drops so far below freezing, but still you'll have some traps on them year round.
And Jeremiah, I don't know if this is a good time, but Kevin would like to know, does anyone have any tips for hibernating Darlingtonia?
So I don't let my Darlingtonia go through a complete hibernation. I grow more like a Heliamphora or a Highland Nepenthes. So I never let them freeze. Every time I've had them freeze, they have more of a tendency to rot for me. So maybe some people, like in the Pacific Northwest, they're like, oh, you just throw them outside and it's an easy to grow plant. Everyone else in the world is like, man, this is a difficult one. So this is the first greenhouse I built with my dad and brother's help. So my bedroom actually growing up was right through these windows here. So I could climb up through these bedroom windows into my little greenhouse, and it was just my paradise. I think I was about 14 years old when we started this greenhouse. Right now, it is Sarracenia and Flytraps. This one has not frozen yet either, but I will let it freeze in the winter. Flytraps and Sarracenia are doing relatively well here because it is a lean-to greenhouse. I do have some supplemental lighting on the side closest to the wall. Again, these are the Carnivorous Flora Wave lights to give them a little boost. This is facing south, but during the summer, the sun is so high in the sky, the house tends to block the sunlight on this close side. But as you can see, this side, the colors on Sarracenia are still pretty good. Again, these are starting to go dormant, so they don't look near like they did a few months ago. But it's cool stuff. I think this one is Elvis Wilkerson. Then we have Theodore Bennett from Trey. Then I think I have a little Sarraceniasaurus kind of right here. But yeah, some pretty cool stuff. I used to have my entire collection in here. So it was set up kind of the same way where 2/3 of it was for Nepenthes, 1/3 was for temperate plants. And now it's all just temperate plants. I don't use this misting system at all anymore. I keep one circulation fan going all the time right here. And then this is a swamp cooler. It's already been drained for the year, so it's just bringing in cool air from the outside. I still have to have those open even in the winter because as soon as that Colorado sun comes out, it can get very hot in here. So I do put a cover on it on the really, really cold nights to keep air from just flowing through it. But I also need it to be able to turn on and bring airflow through here, or it would be 100 degrees in here, even on a 10-degree day. And then this is an exhaust fan up in the top corner that pulls the hot air out the other side of the greenhouse. This one is all redwood with a marine varnish over the top. It's held up really well. It definitely would have held up better if I wasn't misting so often when I had Nepenthes in here, because that much water, it just sooner or later, even redwood with the marine varnish kind of starts to deteriorate. I don't know if you can kind of see here that this would probably need replacing in the next year or two just to keep this structure safe. Okay, but this also has the float, the table here that is PVC and polyfilm, and that just keeps them in the water about the same height. So yeah, we're at an inch give or take, and they just constantly keep sitting in water even in the middle of winter.
All right, no questions yet.
No questions yet. Well, now I guess we can head back to the large greenhouse and do either, right, let's start with the lowland chamber, and we will take a look at some lowland plants. Okay.
I think people who follow you are familiar with your giant Highland Nepenthes, or even just your Nepenthes and Sarracenia collection. Do you have some carnivorous like bromeliads or utricularia, or do you have like little odds and ends that you
It's
enjoy
stuff
but
that,
maybe aren't
yeah,
on
that gets
social media?
overlooked
Yeah.
a little bit more often. Yeah, I mean, we'll go in and we'll take a gander and see what there is that's looking nice. It is the large lowland and highland Nepenthes always seem to take precedent. So here's a nice Drosophilum that's right as you go into the greenhouse. So it's in flower right now. I think this one is 2 years old. But yeah, I actually keep this one sitting in water as well. So I know some people say don't do that, but it gets so much light here that I feel like it's fine, at least for now. Okay, so we will come on to the other side. So first, yeah, here's Heptioides, which is one of the 3 or 4 recognized carnivorous bromeliads, which none of them are absolutely spectacular, but they are carnivorous, so I do grow them. In this greenhouse, it's 99.9% carnivorous plants. I do have a few small aeroids that Trevor helped me out with right in this corner. So we have a variegated monstera, I think a gloriosum, and a veitchii. But I think, oh, and I have one begonia, and those are pretty much my only non-carnivorous plants in this greenhouse. So this area is basically 3 layers of carnivorous plants. It has kind of intermediate Nepenthes hanging, also Highland Nepenthes there. But then as we go down, under each bench could be a different variety. So this is the Pinguicula bench. So this one is Pinguicula, I think Phil Felice, was known previously as Filcula, named by Howard. But yeah, so the Pinguicula collection, definitely because of Howard and BC, is looking pretty darn good right now. Maybe not as many flowers this time of year, but that's kind of to be expected. Okay, and then on this side, we have some of the Heliamphora. So also down underneath a bench, these are also grown under the Carnivoro lights. And this was the first bench I put those lights under, and they're holding up well. I think this one is half gone, but it's about 4 years old now.
And
Have
it's
stuff like all
it's
the
being dripped on
colossus.
by water.
Exactly. So I do have this polycarbonate that should keep 95% of the water off it. So hopefully if it's dripping, it's just dripping off the sides of it and doesn't actually get on the light itself. And then just have a small circulation fan to keep the Heliamphora looking nice. I find that in a large greenhouse, especially a humid one, Heliamphora, the nectar glands, are really prone to getting some kind of black mold on them because it's so sweet. So with a little better circulation, I feel like that helps a lot. Okay, as we come on back this way, what else? I think under most of these other benches, these are kind of Nepenthes seedlings. So we have stuff from like red leaf exotics. So a lot of these have cool like Candy Dreams pictures in them, or as a parent. Then we have a couple of like my own crosses. Let's see. I think I see a pretty nice Edwardsiana crossed with Veitchii here that always has some pretty cool striped peristome when it first opens. And these are getting some nice light as well. Same sort of lights here. And I really like this nice like pink or red coloration on the leaves. This is a nice Ephipiata from the Hose Mountains. Let's see what else we've got over in this corner. Here is a flowering Utricularia. This is Elspundii. This one is flowering right now, has some great little flowers that I should take some photos of. And then lots of Quelchii, but I don't think any have flowers on them yet, but nice Quelchii here growing in a net pot. So it just shoots out all those little runners from the sides of it and looks pretty awesome, especially when it has like 10 or 15 flowers on it. Then up in the rafters, as stuff gets taller, you can see like vining plants. So one of my favorites is this Gilbrata here that has these amazing white pictures that look like a little bit of red was hand painted on it. And I guess we can come on around this way. So this side of the greenhouse has a 60% shade cloth on it. But then I also do use supplemental LEDs. They've been a more recent addition, as I've found that the more plants I have hanging in the rafters, that blocks a lot of the sun, especially on the north side, which is this side right here, that they needed just some supplemental light. So actually, Mikhail helped suggest some of these, especially these like spotlights. So it's kind of like a party light outside, but has an LED grow light. And so I just have that draped over, and wherever I need more light, I just hung one right there. And so it's pretty handy. And I really liked that suggestion that I saw in his greenhouse a couple months ago. Let's see. So down here we have some more Heliamphora. So I find that they like the coolest area possible. I would say they look best for me around December. During about sneeze. Nope, got rid of it. During the summer, I don't think they have quite as good a color for me, but these have really started coloring up over the last just couple weeks. Need to clean them up a little bit, but Brad did that about 2 months ago, and they're still looking pretty darn nice. A couple favorites, this Raja crossed with Edwardsiana across that I did a while back. Here's, I think, the third largest picture I've had on it, but it is just spectacular right now. Has 4 pictures on it, all about a foot tall.
How big is the pot for that plant?
That one is in a 1-gallon pot. So actually not that big of a pot. This is the plant right here. Here's the biggest picture, which is actually just at, I think, 15 inches. So by girth and size, one of the largest Nepenthes pitchers I've ever had. I've had them up to about 17 inches, but usually it's a skinnier one, like a Lowii truncata. And this one would hold, I gotta measure it, but we're looking at probably almost 3 liters of liquid if I filled it to the top. Okay, then as I come around this bench, you see a nice Mollis. This is a male Mollis that I've sent out a lot of pollen with over the years and have lots of nice offspring from it. Nice Edwardsiana there. I think my biggest Edwardsiana picture right now is this guy, which again, just over a foot tall. This is a beautiful female clone of it. So made a couple hybrids with it. And then down here, okay, we have the Cephalotus collection, which was looking terrible this spring. So we got everything repotted on a big day where a lot of people came over and helped out. So we got Cephalotus and Heliamphora repotted. So these still don't look their best, but they're actually looking relatively healthy. So even though they haven't quite filled in the pots yet after the division in April, most of these, I'm pretty happy with how they look, and they'll bounce back, and especially now that the cool temperatures of winter have come on. My favorite dark clones, this one is Triffid Albany Black, and then there's Eden Black on that side, and OG Black, I would say, are my darkest growing Cephalotus, but I think a lot does have to do with light and temperatures. Then I also have lots of kind of the Orchiaceae utricularia here. This is an Alpina crossed with Humboldtii, or I think it's Humboldtii alpina. They just kind of like it off in the base. Then we have way underneath here, which this is where I've been doing a lot of weeding, so making sure that I don't have a lot of growth, more of these Orchiaceae utricularia. And they're just happy in this quite low light environment that stays relatively moist. Then over in this area, we have one of my bigger Darlingtonia. I repotted it this spring, but it's definitely a happy one. I think this is a clone that came originally from the Atlanta Botanic Gardens, so it's 6 Rivers, if I remember right, but pretty sweet. Then let's come on up this way. Any questions in the meantime?
Sure. All right. So Jeremiah, you have lots of Nepenthes and they're always flowering, it seems. So when after the seed pod opens, you get the little seeds. How quickly can you fertilize them after you sow them?
I definitely wouldn't fertilize until I see germination. So once they germinate, after they produce their first 2 like seed leaves. And then they start to produce that first pitcher, I think is when you could hit them with fertilizer. And then as soon as they get large enough that you could use a little needle to fertilize inside the pitcher, that is definitely what I would recommend. I don't have time to do it with all of my plants, but some of the really quick Nepenthes from seed that I've seen recently, it's lots of repotting and lots of heavy fertilizer. So the more you fertilize, probably the more you need to repot.
And you think Maxi would be a good?
Maxi, I mean, there's a lot of things that work, but Maxi is what I use. Quarter strength for almost everything. You can use more, you can use less, and probably any seaweed-based fertilizer would be fine. But Maxi is just a good, easy go-to that seems to work for almost everything. If I fertilize the roots with Maxi, I definitely have to repot more. And so I don't fertilize any of my Nepenthes by the roots at the moment, just because I don't want to have to repot a collection of this size like every year and a half. Some of these have been in the same pots for probably 5, 6, maybe getting close to 10 years now. When I pollinate something, like, so this one's about ready to collect. This is a Cingulana crossed with Jacquelinia. And see, these pods have turned brown. They'll probably split within the next couple days. These definitely look successful. So I will pull those off, give them a plant, and we'll see how they do. A lot of times I don't have, well, for sure 100% success rate, but usually these days, if I can do 50 or 60%, I feel like things went pretty well. So this is what a normal like flower stalk might look like, where honestly, like none of these lower pods got pollinated or it didn't take. And then you can see as you go up, these definitely look like they were pollinated. But yeah, should be an exciting one. This is a female Edwardsiana, so should have some fun stuff coming out of that, just not as many as I would have liked.
Do you think the lower ones didn't take because of timing or because of the pollen?
I need to look on it. So I think lower ones were pollen that was stored in the freezer. I've had pretty good success with that up to about 3 months. But the bottom one was, I think, pollen that I had recently collected. Sometimes it just, I don't know what the deal is. I find that if I pollinate in the evening or at night, I seem to have slightly better success, but I haven't done any for sure like scientific research on that. It's just most of my Nepenthes now, I try and pollinate after dark. And maybe that helps. Maybe it's just in my mind, but who knows?
All right, Jeremiah, because of time, we're going to do a speed round.
Yes.
Kevin says, do carnivorous bromeliads flower? The answer is yes. Jane
Definitely.
asks, I'm a huge fan of dewy pines and I love Brocchinia too. And I agree. Richard says, if a Sarracenia rhizome goes dormant, what technique do you use to get it to grow again?
Keep then moving it somewhere warm in the spring. So I try and repot all of my Sarracenia that need repotting, which usually works out to be every 3 years, as early as possible in the winter. So I try and have all my Sarracenia repotting done by New Year's. So I find that gives me a little bit better color. If you repot like after the flower stalk has already started to emerge, I feel like you get some funky looking pictures, and then the flower stalk usually has some weird bends to it. So repot your Sarracenia as soon as possible, especially after they go dormant. Every 3 years is what I shoot for, but I don't make a mark on that.
You showed us some Nepenthes, and Jane said that one looks like it could swallow a small mammal. And I know like 5 days ago, you did show a small mammal in one of your pitcher plants.
For sure. I mean, they catch lots of mice in this greenhouse, usually this time of year, but actually during the summer, I had a few get caught.
Jane asks, how do you propagate your Cephalotus? So you can do leaf cuttings or divisions.
Yeah, so usually I'll do leaf cuttings. I take those leaf cuttings off. I put them in pure long fiber sphagnum. Then I cover them, so usually with like a Ziploc bag. I don't touch them for about 3 to 4 months, and hopefully, again, about 50% of those will start growing. The larger Cephalotus, when I repot them, I just pull off separate growing points. but Cephalotus don't seem to really love being repotted all that often, so I don't do that as often.
How do you hand pollinate the Nepenthes? Jane would like to
Yes.
know.
So I always try and take the male flower. So I cut off or grab some of the flower stalks. So that same mollis I showed you is a male, and it's actually in flower right now. So I would normally, with tweezers, pull off, as you can see, the flower. So this one has two flowers kind of on one stalk. So then I would take it over here. So I'm actually going to repollinate one that I've already pollinated with this mollis. So take it here. And then up here, maybe I'll need a stool. Here's a female, and I just touch it to the very top. And then usually I'm looking for the top to start to turn brown in about a week. And that usually tells me, hopefully the pollination was successful. So that's all it took. Then I label it. That one I first pollinated on the 27th of October. So hitting it again is not a bad idea.
And you can see the pollen getting grabbed by the stigma.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Jacob will like to see the Leviathan, but he would also like to see the father of the Leviathan.
Father of Leviathan, the Raja? So Raja,
I
so
think
it's a
that's what he's
Raja crossed
asking.
with
Yeah.
Peltata. My large Raja, it actually just vined and is baseling, so it doesn't have any large pictures on it at the moment. So the largest picture on my female Raja, let's see if we can get in there. It is
Jeremiah,
not great.
he actually wants to see the truncata of the truncata times Leviathan hybrid.
Okay.
But everybody knows Leviathan, so we can see the father of Leviathan too.
Yes, so we'll jump in the lowland chamber, and it will be hot. I think it's about 100 degrees in here right now. So this is the lowland chamber. The truncata that is the mother of the seed that I sent you is right here. It actually has a much bigger picture in the back, but I don't know if I can quite reach it, but still this picture is well over a foot tall and really pretty nice.
So Jacob did ask for the father, but when you're looking at a Grex, the first name is always the female.
First name's always the female, exactly.
And the second one is the pollen source.
Exactly. So we'll show you the lowland chamber while we're in here. These are all lowland or Nepenthes that I grow as lowland. So some people will be confused to see, like, this is Nebularum. I grow this as a lowlander, and I find that it grows quite a bit faster for me as a lowland plant. And as you can see, the leaves are super nice, healthy looking plant. Growing as a lowlander easily. We're at 100 degrees in here. I don't know if you can see, but I'm starting to sweat already. Then we have stuff like rafts, this amp in the background. This is a beautiful spotty clone. Clipiata, another one that is more of an intermediate plant, but I think it grows better for me as a lowlander right here. And what else? This Alba marginata, this black one, is a spectacular lowland plant. We can come on. Here's a nice red ampullaria that I'm getting some pretty good sized pictures off of that. And of course, if you're in Thailand or somewhere tropical, they're a lot easier than growing lowland plants in Colorado. Here's a really nice truncata. I think this is the Passon Highland from BE back in this corner. One of my this is the Singapore Giant Raff. I've had some huge pictures on it. One Halloween, I dressed up as Rob Cantley and held a pretty good size one, not quite as big as his wild one, but I was pretty happy with it. Then we have another huge truncata here, which I'm going to have to cut back soon because it's going to be blocking the light of too many other plants. And then Classii, which I also grow as a lowlander right here, which is always a pain to grow. It basically only has one good looking picture on it at a time for me, but then I have a real big bical in the middle, but it kind of hit the top. The main growing point's not looking super nice, but now it's sending out a ton of offshoots here. So that one should have some really nice pictures soon. Any questions while I'm in this lowland chamber before I start to overheat?
Nope, I think that's good. Is the Leviathan in the other room?
Yep, Leviathan's back this way. Let's see if we can
Oh,
get a good.
do you
So
have
I actually,
sorry, Jeremiah, do you have Diariana?
yes. Oh, Diariana. I guess we'll go
Diariana.
back in here real quick. One of the oldest still living or hybrids. So it's a huge plant. Let's see if we can grab a nice picture. So again, we're looking at well over a foot tall, and it's this giant one as we go back in there. I'll probably have to cut this one back as well because it's going to be taking up too much of my precious lowland space.
So CB would like to know, when you are doing crosses like Velosa times Edwardsiana or Edwardsiana times Velosa, do you see does the mother or the father traits, are they heavier influence? Do they show
So I would say that so far we haven't done enough to know, especially with crosses like that. Finally, I mean, it's just been within the last 3 or 4 years that those crosses have been done. So even the largest plants that have been produced are still only going to be a couple inches across. One major difference I can think of is truncata crossed with spectabilis and spectabilis crossed with truncata. So if you ask me, the spectabilis crossed with truncata definitely takes a little more of the spectabilis side of things. Its picture is a little more colorful. Parasome is maybe a little more solid, where the truncata crossed with spectabilis is maybe a little more like truncata. Now, that's the only one where I grow both that maybe I could tell, but most of the other stuff, it's too new. Like Nepenthes breeding to get Grex, I mean, we're just kind of in the base of that, and especially to breed them, especially on the rare stuff, getting them up to a big enough size, you could really tell. Okay, so we're gonna go in here. So lowland, this one is Leviathan. So it's this guy right here. Not the biggest picture I've ever had on it, but this one is just transitioning to upper pictures, so it's a little bit more elongated. And I think that one is actually in flower again. Oh no, that's a different one, a male. So hopefully I'll have some more. Oh yeah, it might be the same one. More male Leviathan hybrids coming in the not too distant future. But I plan on about 3 to 6 months from when I pollinate a Nepenthes from when I can collect seed.
and you're saying Leviathan is growing in warmer conditions?
So it's actually growing with a cover on the top to prevent too much mist from hitting the leaves. So I find that peltata, it doesn't like a lot of water on the leaves, and I was getting more like spotting and weird stuff on the leaves. So I put these polycarbonate panels over the top, so that prevents water from getting directly onto the leaves when the greenhouse is misted. But I'll still go through, water them. It's just then it'll evaporate much quicker. So stuff like this is peltata crossed with Velosa right here. So most of my like peltata and peltata hybrids, I keep with this cover on them to prevent too much misting, because their leaves, peltata's leaves, are so hairy. It seems to keep the water on the leaves longer and could be more of a chance of giving me rot. But here's like a pure peltata, if that makes sense.
Yep. Jacob says he has a BE Raja times peltata as a house plant in the dorm, and it seems pretty happy. And Glenn would like to know if you have a Diabolica, and Kevin would like to know or see the Attenborough.
Ah, yes. So some of those, I actually have bigger plants at my house. So I do have freezer grow chambers in my house, which we're not touring today. My best Diabolica here, I think on the FaceTime. Let's see if we can get in it. So this is a male clone about ready to come into flower. But yeah, that picture, it needs a kind of a macro to get that one looking nice. And it needs cleaned up a little bit better. And then my best Attenborough here, I don't know, it's probably this one here, also under a bench here. But yeah, just not that big. It's been one I've struggled with for a long time.
CB would like to know if you have any growing tips for the Diabolica.
Diabolic is a tough one. So Jeff Schaefer and I have been trying to figure that one out, and I think he's pretty much got his figured out to perfection. My best Diabolica are grown in freezer grow chambers, where it never gets very hot. Diabolica seems super sensitive to overheating, and it has like it can have almost like a fungus that will really attack the leaves. So a lot of times you'll see black spots on Diabolica. So I really recommend some good air circulation, cool temperatures, and I would say relatively bright light. Although where I saw them in the wild, it was not bright light at all. And it was super rainy when we were there, very humid. But it was cool. It was around, I think, 2,300 meters. So it is definitely a highland plant, but not quite ultra highland. And a couple more questions. It looks like we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, Kevin would like to know, do you have any suggestions for Nepenthes Raja?
Raja. So I definitely recommend large pots. So I would repot frequently, keeping the size of the pot almost identical to the size of Raja. So if you have a 3-inch Raja, I would put it in 3 to 3.5-inch pot. As soon as it out, repot it again. Raja also likes very bright light. So make sure as the leaves are unfurling, you see a little bit of that red or pink on the leaf, and that will be telling you you're giving it enough light. And it also loves heavy pitcher feeding, especially with real insects. It seems to be sensitive to fertilizer. So I would try using like crickets, mealbugs, or something along those lines as soon as the pitcher is large enough. But yeah, dried bloodworms would work too. Just something in the pitcher. If it's happy, it is one of the fastest growing Nepenthes in my collection. When it's mad, it will literally do nothing for 10 years. I mean, it's just such a weird plant.
Have you noticed other Nepenthes liking Osmocote versus real insects, or the other way around?
No, I think Osmocote is definitely stronger. So you have more of a chance of damaging the pitcher, which is not really a problem. Like I would rather over fertilize a pitcher, it lose that pitcher, I just cut it off and wait till it grows new ones. I love fertilizing the pitchers if I have time, because I feel like you'll never do anything worse than just kill that pitcher. So it's a really great way of preventing you from like over fertilizing without risking killing the entire plant.
And when you have time, do you do like 1 to 4 Osmocote pellets per pitcher per plant, or?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done Osmocote for quite a few years, but I would say depending on the size of it, I mean, it totally depends. Like a super small pitcher, definitely only 1. But I mean, one of these like Lowii truncata that is 16 or 17 inches, I mean, you could definitely throw a bunch of them in it. With Osmocote, I tend to find it will cause spots on the bottom of the pitcher where the Osmocote pellets sat. So again, be a little more careful. I know, who was it? I think Chris Hartley recommended for Nepenthes using the green capped Osmocote pellets instead of the pink capped one, or setting your Osmocote 24 hours in water. And that seems to take out just enough of the fertilizer that it will be less damaging to the pitcher itself. And so I would definitely recommend that, because if you just put straight Osmocote, I do feel like it kills the pitcher, even if it is benefiting the plant as a whole.
So for your fertilizing, you're mostly doing misting of Maxi on the
Yep,
leaves?
Maxi in the pitchers.
Okay.
So filling up just 1 or 2 squirts, dashes, again, totally depends on the size of the pitcher. I would say my goal is to find that like rib where it seems like most of the digestive glands are below. So on something like Hamada, I would fill the pitcher up to right here on a mature pitcher. So usually that would be maybe a couple milliliters, maybe, I don't know, an ounce, but just like that. And where, like on a big one like this one, I mean, you could literally probably fill it up to here. But the more maxi you put in it, the more chance you have of killing that pitcher. And some species don't seem to like too much maxi. So certain species, inermis, the second I put any maxi in it, it seems to lose that pitcher. But I feel like it's for the best of the plant. Gobrata, another one, when I fertilize a pitcher, I'd love to kind of play around and maybe find some fertilizers that don't kill the pitcher anytime I use it, but it is what it is.
All right, those were really good tips. So if
Yeah.
anyone has any more questions, we have about 5 minutes left for your ampularia, which are in the other room. Do you have any tips on how to get them to create a bunch of basils?
It's just, it takes time. I mean, those I've had for quite a few years. They definitely really seem to appreciate fertilization. Once it starts to vine, don't cut it, because a lot of times it really has to vine first, and then it produces those nice either aerial rosettes or the nice basal pitchers. Either start with a bigger plant and then just fertilize it a fair bit. But I found ampullaria can take a fair bit of fertilizing before you start causing any damage to it.
All right, very good. Do you have any, do you have like two more plants you want to show off?
Two more plants. So let's see. I mean, I think I pretty much showed you my favorites. This is a nice Diabolica crossed with Edwardsiana. So actually the father plant is this Edwardsiana right here. So it's a nice male. Nepenthes dude sent me a cutting of that recently. So I'm happy to have the father of a lot of the Edwardsianas that I've produced. But it's just spectacular. And these were about the size of the Diabolica I saw in the wild. So you cross it with Edwardsiana and finally get something I can grow almost as good as the ones I saw in the wild. But that's a pretty cool one. Other than that, super happy everyone could join. You know, I'm probably Jeremiah's plants just about anywhere you'd follow on social media, but I try and give tours open day at least once a year, and always love showing off my collection.
All right, thank you so much, Jeremiah. I have one more question from Aaron. He would like to know if you've ever used coffee as a fertilizer.
I actually have, and I've had, I would say, relatively good success with it, especially fertilizing the media. So it seems to be something that doesn't cause a lot of algae growth. I actually have a whole gallon of coffee in my fridge right now, but I haven't used coffee as fertilizer for Nepenthes in probably 4 or 5 years, but I'm going to use it in the freezer grow chamber. Actually, my wife's been trying to remind me to do it for the last week. So as soon as I have time, I would definitely recommend a coffee as a supplement as well, especially a good one for the soil.
All right, so Aaron was explaining it to me. Can you explain it to the audience? Do you know the science behind it? He's saying you're using the actual like coffee that you would drink and you would pour it
brewed
on
coffee.
Yeah.
And I actually used to use a fair bit of it because I used to work at Starbucks. So I would save all of our coffee as it was kind of getting old and we could no longer serve it, which at Starbucks we had a fair bit. So I would keep a big container there. So then I would take it home by the gallon and use a lot of it as fertilizer for a while. But I still think Maxi in the pitcher, you will get better growth.
Do you know why plants would want coffee?
I remember reading people that that had done it in the past, and it sounded like they did amazing with it. So I was like, I'll give anything a try once.
Okay. Aaron says it has potassium and it's acidic, so that's why the plants like it.
Makes sense then.
Okay, Gads is asking, any tips for spec PNG?
Oh, okay, so that's another nightmare to grow. So again, my biggest one are in freezer grow chambers. It's definitely, if you let it get hot, it's die. It seems very, very prone to rot. So keeping the airflow high seems really important. I mean, my biggest one is probably about 3 inches across with maybe 3/4 inch trap. So I need to take a photo of it. It's actually doing better than it has for quite some time, but it's still nothing to be proud of.
All right. Well, I don't want to end on that sad note.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it's just a beautiful day in the greenhouse. Usually, even my Nepenthes. There's one Nepenthes villosa picture that we can end with that. It's a beautiful male villosa. It just produced this picture. It's been kind of picture sparse because it did flower relatively recently, but this one is pretty darn nice. So I think this is its second picture it's made since flowering. Yep, not disappointed with that at all. This is one of the Jeff Wong villosas. So it was actually planted from seed in 1996.
All right.
Pretty cool one.
I think we can end now that we're in better spirits. CB says it looks like you're in the golden hour, even though you're only at 3 o'clock, but it's winter.
Exactly. And the sun will go behind Pikes Peak here relatively soon. So that's kind of why I wanted to do it at this time of day, so the sun would look really nice for our tour.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah, and thank you everyone for attending this live, and we hope to see you in a future ICPS video.
Ciao.
It's not a surprise that gardeners, educators, and scientists are fascinated by these unique plants. The International Carnivorous Plant Society, or ICPS, not only love these plants, but welcomes growers just getting started all the way through professional scientists. The ICPS even started an annual World Carnivorous Plant Day to celebrate them. The free online event is held the first Wednesday of May. Take a look around our website and you'll find historic documents about carnivorous plants, growing guides, free educational resources, and more. Have questions? Ask. We don't bite, but our plants do.